Hey everybody, Kyle Sasser here, Great Homes Tampa Bay. And today we're talking about a topic that a lot of people get a little scared of, get a little skittish talking about it, but something that's very important to take into account in all of the Tampa Bay area, but especially over in Pinellas County. And what are we talking about? Well, we're talking about flood insurance. So, flood insurance isn't really anything to be scared of. Just because you are required to have flood insurance doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be, 8 feet underwater next year. So let's start at the top. So one is, do you need flood insurance? I do highly recommend that everyone at least investigate flood insurance wherever you're at throughout the entire Tampa Bay region. And the reason why is we do have hurricanes, we do have very high rain events. And even if you're not directly next to a river or a large body of water, just the fact that we have so much rainfall here, it's really worth looking into getting flood insurance, even if you are not in a direct floodplain. So what is flood insurance and how is flood insurance determined? Is it included in homeowners? Going to get to all those questions. So first off, no, it is not included in homeowners. Flood insurance is an additional policy that you get on top of your homeowner's insurance. Now, flood insurance is determined. Now, the amount that you pay for flood insurance is determined by a few things, and it is based on the specific risk of your property. I am not an insurance agent by any stretch of the imagination. There is a lot of detail that goes into pricing insurance. So if you have specific questions, please reach out to your insurance agent, or if you need an insurance agent, I'll be happy to refer you to some great ones that I work with pretty frequently. Now, what do I mean by specific risk? Basically, that's just a term that I use to state that they don't really use maps to determine flood risk. So what actually happens is you have to have a surveyor come out and they survey your property and they provide what is called an elevation certificate. On the elevation certificate, you're going to see the structure. It's going to give you quite a bit of information about the various elevation levels, both on your property and on surrounding properties. The key ones being main flood risk, elevation to slab, and then surrounding properties. So let's just cut to the chase. Surrounding properties. If you are the low spot, so if all of your neighbors are higher than you are and you're the low spot, flood risk is going to be higher. That's going to affect your flood premiums. Elevation to slab is going to be an actual surveyed elevation given for the height above sea level or floodplain for where you are located at. And that's going to be a key ingredient in your flood risk, and thus your flood insurance premiums. So houses built on concrete slabs, our height to grade is going to be basically right at ground level. If you're on a stilt house, it's usually to the first habitable level. Most stilt houses, the bottom floor is not considered habitable, but that does depend on house by house basis. And then overall flood risk. So FEMA has completed flood maps for flood risk in most of the country, but especially in very flood prone areas. So you can go to FEMA and there you will see maps and you will see whether you are in the 100-year floodplain or the 500-year floodplain or the no floodplain. Well, let's start off with the easy one. So low to no risk is flood zone X. So if you see flood zone X, you're not necessarily safe, but your flood risk is very low. And then your highest risk areas are going to start with an A. And the second letter depends on what the flood risk is. So here in Pinellas County, we have a lot of AEs, which is just flood risk from rising bodies of water. I can tell you that at my house, my elevation certificate says that my slab is 4.4 feet above sea level. That is not very high at all. So my personal home is at very high flood risk. So the core part of the premium is based on the flood risk. The second part of the premium is based on the age of the home. Currently, there are some programs in place to help alleviate the cost of flood insurance for houses that were built before flood maps were a thing. The reason why is obvious. You don't want to penalize a large segment of the population just because they built a home before we knew better. So now there's some people that really don't like government subsidizing flood risk. Personally, I think that, a home is a huge investment and flood insurance is a pretty worthwhile endeavor that all of us should chip in a little bit for. So I do say that both personally because I do live in a home that was built in 1972 with a 4.4 foot flood elevation, but also just overall, I think it's a relatively good thing to kind of smooth risk out across the population. So if your house was built before there was actual flood maps, and in Pinellas County, ballpark, that's going to be before the mid to early 70s, which covers most of the county south of Almerton. Once you get a little north of that, and like Pinellas Park, you'll start finding stuff built in the 80s, but St. Petersburg and down around Clearwater, most of that's going to be built before flood maps. Homes built after flood maps, if they are in high-risk areas, they will usually be built on stilts, or with a lot of dirt or fill brought in to bring that first habitable floor of the dwelling up above the flood level. And the reason why they do that is because otherwise the flood insurance is going to be tremendously expensive. I have heard of a few properties that were built at grade in a high-risk flood area after the flood maps, and their flood insurance is in the $5,000 to $6,000 range. Ouch. And that's a year. So yeah. Definitely have to mind the specifics when it comes to flood insurance. For homes that are grandfathered in, much more reasonable, although still pretty significant. Flood insurance premiums for homes built before the flood maps that are grandfathered in and that are currently in that subsidized program usually pay like $1,500 to $2,000. So it's still pretty significant, and that's still going to add quite a bit to your monthly payment if you if you have a loan and you are making payments, but not a complete deal killer. And why do you need flood insurance if you have homeowners? So the difference is homeowners covers major catastrophic damage such as hurricanes, wind events, tornadoes. It also provides liability insurance if somebody gets hurt on your property. If somebody crashes a car through the garage, it's going to cover all that stuff. The one thing that homeowners does not cover is rising bodies of water. and almost every homeowner's policy specifically has that excluded because it is carried in this separate flood policy. So don't assume just because you have homeowners insurance that you will be covered in flood. And remember, it's not necessarily a rising body of water. There are many other causes of flood. If you have a tremendous rainstorm and your street can't handle it and it runs down your driveway and through your house and out the back door, that would more than likely be considered a flood event by your insurance company, and your homeowners is going to try to wiggle out of that. So that's one of the reasons why I always say it's a good idea to at least investigate it and make that assessment if the cost of the flood insurance, which is usually, if you're in a flood zone X with very low flood risk, you're looking at $400 a year, so $40 a month. So with that knowledge, you can correctly assess the risk and if it's something that you want to take on. It's absolutely worth looking into. So I'm Kyle Sasser. This is Great Homes Tampa Bay. I also host another podcast called Great Things Tampa Bay if you're looking for fun stuff to do. Got a mobile app. Got a link below where you can download all that. If you are looking for your own great place in Tampa Bay, I'd love to help you out. I am a realtor with Keller Williams, so I'll put my contact information below. You can reach out to me there, or feel free to send me an email, kyle@sassergroup.com. That's KYLE at SASSERGROUP.com. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have. Hit that subscribe button. Leave me a comment below if you think flood insurance is a complete waste of time, or maybe have a story about when flood insurance helped you out. I'd love to hear it. Other than that, thanks for tuning in, guys. If you have any questions, let me know.